Wanted to catch up with you guys because I haven't been on in a while. Let me just fix up my chat. There we go. I think it's set up right now. Let's see what else. Um, okay, everything looks good. I haven't been on here in a while. I actually am recovering from a cold. I'm not a fan of getting a cold, but unfortunately it happens. I'm, like, in my 5th day right now, so I'm starting to feel, like, really good. This was a particularly rough cold because it was, but it wasn't. I think this thing is just going around because everybody's been sick, so it's like I lost my smell for, like, a whole day, and I lost my voice for a whole day, and then it started to come back the next day, and now I'm on, like, day 3 or 4. So, all day yesterday, I was doing a separate project, I was recording vocals, but that's a whole 'nother story. I wanted to talk about a few things that today. We might get into some deeper topics here. If you're new to the channel, welcome, what's up? Um, Please like and subscribe, and also yeah, let's get into it. So let's first talk about hair. So this is my hair right here. And I know this is kind of like something I normally don't talk about on here, but it's because I've been accused on this particular channel of wearing weave or wearing wigs. I haven't worn a weave or wigs in over 3 years. I used to wear them sometimes for fun because I didn't want to put all the different color on my hair. I didn't want to do, you know, platinum blonde and then switch back to black and then switch back to pink or something like that. So for fun, every now and again, I would put on a wig that had a different color. That was years ago though, but I stopped wearing them because I was getting a lot of harassment for that on the internet, and it was kind of weird because underneath the wig, my hair was this long, but actually a little bit longer. I think it was more about right here, and it was dark brown. So it's like I have a full head of hair, but for fun, on a special event, on an occasion, I would wear, let's say, like a blonde wig or a mixed color or just something cool. And they were lace front, so they looked really good. But people would say so many derogatory comments about women of color wearing wigs and, like, accusing me of not having hair and all this crazy stuff, and I was like, "You know what? I'm just gonna take them off." So, I dyed my own hair, I bleached my own hair, which I was very afraid of doing that. I did that about 3 years ago. It's when you see my hair, like, bright red, and then I added a few more streaks after I built up some courage. I have, like, red streaks in it, and I did that for a few years and, like, maybe a year and a half, and it was kind of like I got bored with it. So I was like, "I don't know if I wanna do another color." I almost went jet black. I love jet black because it makes my hair really shiny, it's silky, and it's really healthy for my hair. But the problem with jet black is when you dye your hair that color, it is super hard to get that color out. So if you decide that you wanna go blonde or you wanna add some highlights or you wanna add a different color to it, it becomes almost impossible because you have to remove the dark pigment. So I wanted to go lighter before I went darker. Realistically, I'm probably gonna go jet black because that's usually what I do if I go blonde. So I bleached my own hair. It's not perfect right now. I actually have to refix up the color this week, probably later on in the week. But yeah, this is my own natural hair growing out of my scalp, and it's a little bit frizzy. My hair texture when it's not straightened, I use a flat iron. I don't perm. I know there's a lot of things about that. And by the way, if you wear wigs, if you wear weaves, if you perm, that's okay. I just don't because it's not good for my hair. My mom started perming my hair when I was a little girl, and she started when I was around, like, 4 or 5 years old, and my hair was naturally super curly at 4 or 5 years old, like, kind of like Spanish curls is kind of like the visual I would use, and when she permed it, it became really frizzy and unhealthy and dry, and it would break off, and so I had that hair all throughout high school. I didn't like it, and then finally, I decided to just go all natural, cut off all of the perm, and my hair grew like crazy, and I was really surprised. I'm like, "Whoa, I have curly hair," and I've made, like, a couple of videos with it, like, 2 or 3 videos with it where you could see it. I was really surprised I had that hair texture because women of color, our hair textures are so diverse, but there's this stigma and propaganda and ideas that we only have one hair type. So honestly, I went through a lot of experience that I think a lot of women did after they stopped perming their hair, where I was really surprised at my texture. I don't know if you'll be able to see it now because I straightened it like last week, but maybe one day I'll do like a hair care tutorial. The bleaching took a while. I didn't get it this color on the first time. I did 1 round of bleach, I waited a few weeks, and then I came back and did another round of bleach, and then did some color correction. I'm gonna do color correction again later on this week. So, no, I don't wear any wigs, I don't wear any weaves. I used to wear clip-ons about 3 years ago just to make it fuller, but I don't even do that anymore. I did figure out how to get my own hair to be fuller, and it was actually through using this right here. This is a really, really popular brush. This isn't an endorsement or advertisement, but this brush right here, it's like super gentle. This right here made my hair a lot fuller. So if you have been following, my hair has gotten a lot fuller over the last maybe 6 months or so because that's when I start using this brush. So I almost posted a video of a review and showing how to do a hair care routine. But yeah, if you have any questions about hair care, like if you're trying to grow out your own hair, I will answer. It was kind of like a hit and miss journey. It took a long time. Now my hair grows so fast. It can grow. I'll put it to you like this. I cut a lot about a month ago. I cut it up to like maybe here, and it's already, as you can see here now. Um, a few years back, I cut it up to here, and it grew to this length. I think it felt like in 6 months. So yeah, it's okay to bleach your own hair, you just have to be really, really careful with your moisture routine, with your proteins, with your overall hair care. So I deep condition at least once a week. No, I don't. At least every 2 weeks, I'll do a deep intensive condition. And yeah, if you're interested, I'll break down a full hair care tutorial. Um, the only thing about my hair that is kind of like in the front, I have what's called a 4B texture, which basically means my hair is thicker in the front, and as it gets towards, like, right here, my hair is naturally a lot straighter, meaning I could take a soft brush and brush it through, and it's straight even after I freshly wash it, it's relatively straight, but not up here. So sometimes in my videos, if it is about time for me to wash it and condition it, it might get a little dry up here. But yeah, it's still on my hair. But it does mean that I am prone to more breakage, unfortunately. So I'm just saying that because there's like still a weird stigma, unfortunately, that women of color um can't grow their hair or don't have hair. I actually know right now at least 5 other women of color, and their hair is way longer than mine. They make my hair look short. You see how long my hair is? Their hair is like down to here. And they're not multiracial or anything like that. Like they're just, Black American women. Different shades, different hair types. Some have like kind of denser, coarser hair, some have more softer curl hair. It's just it is what it is. But my hair is to be exact, it's like a 4A slash 3C. The front part, but back here is like definitely going towards a 3C, and then up here it's more like 4B, and then parts of it are 4A. So that's for the natural girlies who know about hair types and what type of coil. And I have naturally fine hair as well, and medium propensity hair. So, anyways, that's enough about the hair stuff because I would wait. I might make a tutorial though. I know it's totally different from the content I normally make, but I don't mind doing that. I think it might be fun. I'm just gonna check something in my settings really quick because last time I did a live, there were a lot of chat messages, but I totally did not see them. I don't know why my phone has been doing that lately. I'm using a new device, and I'm gonna go ahead and open it up with my other device so I can see and make sure I'm not missing any questions or comments. So let me go ahead and check that out really quick. Um, hold just a minute. Hold on just a minute. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I will be able to see them in just a moment as I'm setting it up on here. Last time, yeah, it took me having to open it up in another device to see it. I'm not sure how I need to set up this new device, but right now I can't really see chat messages on here. All right, so let me go ahead and yeah, so I normally don't get colds and flus, so that really is not fun. If you've had one, it's not fun. I normally take a bunch of um homeopathic stuff like elderberry, vitamin C, stuff like that, so I normally don't get sick, but this cold was like intense. Um I also had some other stuff happen before that, but we won't get into that now. So here we go. Okay. I can see the chat now. Okay, cool. All right, cool. Um, David Wilcox, if you guys have heard about him, I did want to discuss the David Wilcox situation a little bit. That situation does not sit right with me all, at all. And if you're not familiar with him, so he's a famous UFO, UAP researcher. He talks a lot about, hey, what's up? He talks a lot about aliens and spirituality and metaphysics and stuff like that. So he's been really prominent on that scene for decades. And at one point on YouTube, he was massive on YouTube. We're talking about it was a while ago, like 2012-ish, somewhere around then. He did a lot of prophecy type stuff and really interesting guy. I never really got too much into his stuff, but I was aware of him. And all of a sudden, if you look into that situation, if you type in what happened to David Wilcox, um, he is no longer with us. And he had actually did a live stream just a day before or something like that. He seemed to be in great health. He was enjoying life. He talked about so many positive things, spiritual messages, prophecies. He was excited about the future. And to go from that to passing on in the way that allegedly he did, it really did not sit well with me at all. Again, I'm not very familiar with his content in terms of like I wasn't keeping up with him and stuff like that. I actually hadn't even watched one of his videos in a long time. I was never like super into him, but again, he was just one of those people I was just aware of that was positive, doing his thing. When he passed on in the way that he did, and he also had talked about warnings of things like that happening and it being maybe suspect. It really hit me a little bit. And normally for somebody I don't really like I'm not I don't really watch his stuff like that or anything like that. That one kinda hurt because I went through and I watched his live stream he did right before he passed on, and his channel's still up, David Wilcox, or David Wilcock, and when I watched it, just his energy and how he was and how positive and how optimistic and how he was really standing up for truth and spirituality and standing against spiritual warfare and just hearing what he said. He was really big into holistic foods and health and all kinds of stuff. Disclosure, he was extremely excited about the disclosure stuff. He's been talking about that stuff for years. Emotionally, I do feel like he might have been a light worker because that would hit me a little bit. Like, it just doesn't feel right. It still doesn't sit right with me, and he talked about months and months ago, I guess, in an earlier live stream about how he was really worried about, passing on or if something were to happen to him, he was worried that he felt like, you know, who was gonna continue his work because he was doing very specialized work, and he was trying to get more people into doing, group work and things like that. But I had something happen, which I don't know if I wanna get too into this right now, but I have a couple of tumors, like 5, fibroid tumors, and remember actually, it ties in well with remember we were just talking about perms earlier, and I talked about how my mom would perm my hair in childhood and when I was a teenager. It actually turns out that if you perm hair, it's now been proven. Before it used to be kind of like a myth or kind of like, um, I don't wanna call it a conspiracy, but just something that people didn't really believe in, but it was always rumored they caused fibroids, but now there's scientific evidence and it's a known, cause of fibroids is perms, the hair relaxers, and I would get extreme cramps, I mean debilitating cramps, where the pain was so bad that I would I couldn't function, especially for the first few days of my menstrual cycle. I had to go to the hospital for it a couple of times because the pain was that severe. Advil, Aleve, nothing helped. I had to get, like, the medicine from the doctor, um, which I rarely got, but when I did get it, was the only thing that helped, more powerful stuff. But the pain was extraordinary. And so we went to look up the stuff, and they said I have, like, a lot of fibroid tumors, and they're really big. Like, to my knowledge, they might be the size of, like, a watermelon, definitely a pineapple at this point, you can feel them, they're probably, if I use my hands, like, about, probably, like one's, like, that big probably, and I have 5, to my knowledge. I actually have to go back to the doctor, get rescanned, and find out how much larger they have gotten, but I can feel them. Like, right here, that's all fibroid. I can feel it. It's hard, and it's, like, made out of the same material as, like, bustle. Sorry, I'm still recovering from this cold. So, I have to go get treatment for that. Last time they wanted to do surgery, they wanted to take it out, but I was more into doing the non-invasive procedure where they can, like, freeze it or something like that, so I'm gonna go back. The healthcare system is kind of broken, so it's gonna take steps. Um, didn't make one of the appointments, now I have to reschedule that one and go back. But, unfortunately, so that's gotten like, the fibroids, they're up and down. Some days are really good, and I can barely feel them, and my stomach will be, like, relatively flat, and everything will be smooth. Other days, they get inflamed, particularly around my menstrual cycle because that's what they do. So, they get inflamed or swollen, and it's very hard, and you can feel it, and it causes issues. Well, what happened is the other good news is Uh, they told me that if I want because of where they're placed, if I do wanna have children or something like that, it shouldn't affect that, which is good. They said actually having a child would help it. I've never had a child before, so they said that would help it because that it would come out with that or yeah. Anyways, so but I don't know, I have to go back and I have to check to see it, like, how they are now. Either way, it's not, like, a fun thing to do. But so what happened was sometimes I'll use a compression and I'll put compression around my abdominals, especially after working out. That's really, really good for reducing the inflammation and swelling and the fibroids for me. And I've had a lot of positive results. But because, like I said, they've gotten worse, this did not go so well. So I'm not going to go into too many details about what happened, but I ended up becoming very, very ill, and I only wore the compression for, like, a short amount of time, but it wasn't that. It's the fibroids have gotten pretty bad, and, like, if I were to show you, like, I can feel it's right here, and it's huge. It starts here, goes all the way down, and that's just one. It's that big as what I'm holding. That's just one, and there's other ones. So, right now, it's pretty inflamed. But anyways, that's another story. Long story short, I ended up fainting, and I ended up losing consciousness because, um, the fibro I'll just put it to you like this, the tumors are starting to cause problems because of different stuff. So I ended up fainting, and that was not fun, and I'll leave off some details with that. And when this happened, when I regained consciousness, fortunately, my neighbor found me and had no idea. It was such an interesting experience when that happened. But when oh, thank you for the likes, by the way. When that happened, one of the first, and that's never happened before. I've never fainted before. When that happened, the first thing I thought about, ironically, this was the day after, this was right after Dave Wilcock passed. And the first thing I thought about, ironically, was him, and I'm like, "They took out a light worker." That's honestly how I felt, and it really upset me. I wasn't crying or anything like that, but just it just didn't sit well with me at all. So, if you're familiar with his work, you probably can understand, um, the frustrations with that because it's just everybody say, even his friends in the comments, like, this isn't something's not right." But he was a whistleblower, and he did do a lot of different stuff like that. Anyways, that was very sad. But in terms of, like, the fibroid tumors, it's not like it's just more annoying to have to deal with. A lot of women do. Uh, Mine are larger by far than average, but, I think the average it's a high percentage of women, at least 10% of women have it, um, and it's more common among women who have had their hair relaxed in the past. Fortunately, I have not relaxed my hair in over 10 years, so that probably helps quite a bit. Um, I use a flat iron. I turn it up to like 375, and I do one pass, and like I said, I'll do a tutorial on that sometime. My hair can get a lot straighter and bouncier than this, but this is just, just did something really quick to get on here. But that was really disturbing. In my last video I just posted, I talked a little bit about the traditional marriage. Now, I'm a big fan of traditional marriage. I should start off by saying that. But with the manosphere, there has come an idea of what some people know as the trad wife or trad wives. And that's basically the idea that a woman should submit to her husband. It's very popular with what's called Christian nationalism. And this to me is very different than Christianity or having faith or being spiritual. Christian nationalism is kind of its own beast, so to speak. And it's very popular among the far right and stuff like that, but we won't get into all the details of that. But the trad wife idea is a woman who kind of goes back to very old school stereotypical ideas and notions of what it means to be a woman. So she cooks, she cleans, she takes care of the kids, she always makes sure that she looks nice, she submits to her husband, she makes sure that he's the lead, and she does it in a very almost like a servitude kind of a way, and she has a smile on her face about it. It's almost like a revamped version of the 1950s housewife. And because of influencer culture and social media now, a lot of these women have made channels and pages, especially on short form platforms, where they basically promote, here's me cooking the pot roast. And, they go out and almost like cosplay with these like big dresses. And, they go to church every Sunday and I've heard they go over the top with picking out the outfits and posting pictures of all of that as basically like saying, I'm following the rules, I'm obeying, I'm doing what you're supposed to do, and therefore I'm good. On top of that, a lot of men claim, especially within a manosphere, that that's how you're supposed to be. I will tell you that for people that go down that path, that is not the answer. If you think that by doing this, you are going to secure a good, healthy relationship, that is not how it works because there are women who have literally poured their heart into a man, a marriage, housework, taking care of the kids, always looked beautiful, had a great attitude, were friends with his family, went to church, did the bake fairs, etc., and the men still did not care. It really is going to depend on the man, but in my opinion, a good man will not require you to do all of this. To a certain extent, there's a lot of shaming and a lot of limitations revolving this idea because this community could start to get, or that community can start to get a little bit toxic with ideas such as women should not go to college or women should not work. And a lot of this ideology is backed up by groups like the Heritage Foundation, which a few years back they weren't as bad. There was a lady, I forgot her name, that was running it, a woman of color, I forgot her name. She was the first woman of color that was running it. And she had a lot of really good points and she wasn't as extreme. But when they brought in whoever this new guy is, it kind of went south in a whole different direction. In fact, MSNBC or was it CNN, ABC News, could have been all of them. They recapped what he talked about in an address that he made a few months ago. It was like an hour and a half long, so I didn't watch the whole thing, where he basically said we should start limiting women's opportunities to work, go to school, and start gearing state sponsored efforts into convincing them or compelling them to want to start having kids even before they're ready, when they're right out of high school, instead of going to college. And that's super scary to me, but that's what they were trying to promote and trying to push. And I actually had a lot to say on that. I mean, this technically should be a whole different tape, but when you start pushing women out of the workforce in hopes of, okay, well, they'll go get a traditional husband, they'll start a traditional family. Essentially, what you're doing is creating a society and a system that benefits men and rewards men over women. But this is operating under the assumption that these men are going to be heterosexual and seeking wives, right? But when the women are more desperate for a man because they can't really take care of themselves without a man, it becomes a buyer's market for the men. And all of a sudden, you will have multiple men who can go through and pretty much have their pick of the litter, or just go be with a man and share the wealth and additional income that they're receiving. So it's kind of leaving women in a pretty bad position. However, they didn't consider that part and they don't care because it's not for us. It's not for women and it's not for women of color if you actually look at the data. So, as you know, in addition to being a musician, I'm also a sociologist, went to school for behavioral science, sociology, graduated from one of the top schools in the country. And I normally don't like saying the name of the school just because I'm not like speaking on behalf of the school. I'm using a lot of my own opinions, insights, and things like that. Did very, very well in school. And so I like discussing social psychology as well. And I look at it from a different dimension sometimes. But in terms of what they're doing to women, if you buy into the idea of a man being your savior and a man taking care of you, it puts you in not such a good position if you are at a point where a man is not available to you or for you. And I've seen what that results in some women's lives, and it is a really bad situation. I do think, getting married and stuff like that is fine, but go to school, be able to provide for yourself, be able to take care of yourself so you don't have to make decisions out of desperation, such as marrying someone because they have money and you don't. But you ignore red flags and you skate right over them because they have a lot of money. And I've discussed that in previous tapes before, where I have had offers from men who were extremely wealthy, tens of millions of dollars, and I turned them down because of red flags. Nothing against those guys. I didn't really take the time to really get to know them in depth, but the red flags were enough to where some things that they said or did didn't really sit right with me. However, if I hadn't gone to school, because this was like right when I graduated or a few months before I graduated, if I had not gone to school and I hadn't done certain things, I definitely would have been more likely to just say, "Okay," because they were making big grand promises, and who knows, maybe it wouldn't even have resulted in marriage. Maybe it would have resulted in a toxic situation or relationship, but the point that I'm making is when you have your own and you can do it for yourself, of course, it allows you to be more mindful and conscientious and careful about who you decide to spend your life with, which I believe is really important. So, seeking a man for his material resources isn't something that I would recommend. If you're with a partner and they happen to have great resources, then that's awesome. Cool. Um, Again, as far as being a traditional wife or something like that, I'm okay with the idea of, being nurturing and taking care of your family, but the idea that you should pretty much self-abandon and abandon yourself to take care of the needs of another person over your own is something I have a problem with. So I did talk about that a little bit in my last video. "What's up? How are you doing today? Just saw your comment. Hope you're doing well." So, in general, I find that a lot of our society has been constructed where women are rewarded for playing a role, where women essentially are rewarded for being not only very attractive, but having characteristics that could be associated with the woman, with youth in terms of, and also that align more with the patriarchy. And I'll explain what I mean. A lot of times women are conditioned to hide their intelligence, are conditioned to not be assertive, not be bold about what they want, are conditioned to not build a life for themselves. So if a man, for example, says before he gets married, he wants to make sure he's financially stable, he has nice things in order, he's accomplished certain things, people don't really have an issue with that. But if a woman says that, a lot of times she is attacked. Even just saying independent woman, I've noticed when I talk to certain males and I just say, "Oh, I like being independent." There's like an animosity, like I'm doing something wrong, like I'm doing something that's dark or negative just for wanting to be independent. But I was always told that a woman should not use a man for his money or, that she should be able to take care of herself. But then when you say that you do, there's an animosity there. And I think part of the reason for that animosity comes from the fact that, in general, a lot of men are threatened by that because when you have that sort of freedom to take your time, to not do things out of desperation, then you won't usually fall for the okey doke. And on top of that, you're more likely to be more rational when it comes to your dating choices and decisions. When your whole life is set up and based upon, I have to get married, I have to find someone, I have to have this family, I have to have children with this guy, I have to lock this down, then you're pretty much putting all of your power and potential in that one person's hands. They can now lie, cheat, manipulate, play games, do whatever distortions they want to do because you're in a position where you're more likely to just say, "You know what? I'm going to give it another chance. I'm going to give it another try. We'll see what happens, or maybe it's not that bad. Maybe it's not what I think." And so you would be more aligned to stay in a toxic situation, unfortunately. One moment. So in general, it's really important to make note of that you should be with someone because you want to be with them because they're compatible with you and you feel like they're someone you could spend the rest of your life with and have a healthy experience, not because you feel the need to get a partner or you have to get a partner in order to secure your future. And to a certain extent, I don't want to say I've been there, but almost. I think it's the reason why, well, there were a lot of reasons why I decided to go back to school, but that was kind of part of it, was I just saw that path And I won't get too much into that right now because these kinda get into some, uh, I don't wanna say darker stories, but, kind of like, situations where I realized, I wouldn't be able to take care of my own needs and myself, and it has to do with people making offers that were not too positive, and knowing that I didn't wanna be in a position where I felt like, "Okay, well, that's the" you know what I mean? Like, no. So, just do the best that you can. It's not always gonna be perfect, but at least try to do the best that you can. I have seen so many stories, though, now of women that invested all their hopes and dreams into finding a husband, finding the right man, and then they meet someone, they think that's the right person, and they end up losing decades of their life to being with the wrong one, and that's really, really sad when it happens. It happens to so many women, so many people, and men as well, but of course, I'm talking more from a woman's perspective right now. But yeah, thank you so much for the likes. Thank you so much for hanging out. Definitely check out that newest video. I do notice that my audience on here is kind of, I don't know what to quite say about them. I haven't really quite figured out. There's a lot of characters. I'll just put it to you like that. A lot of characters. So, I might be starting a second channel at some point where I will post on there about this stuff. Because, yeah, there are some, like, kind of, I'll just say characters, but we'll see what happens. But in the meantime, um, yeah, don't be afraid to be a critical thinker, and don't be afraid if people try to invalidate you or if they try to make it seem like you're doing something wrong because you're gaining your own power. Oh, before we go, one last story. This was really, really interesting. This kind of solidifies and shows where we are at today. So the other day, I was on the train, and, it's not just because of gas prices, but actually it's also because I have a car, I drive, but I don't like to drive all the time because the traffic in my city, I live in a major city, the traffic is horrendous. And it's very stressful for me sometimes. Like, it can be very stressful to have to deal with all the delays. So there's a bus that goes straight down the freeway. It has its own lane. So it bypasses all of the traffic, which is really nice because instead of being stuck in, an hour worth of traffic, you can get on this bus and be there in like 10 minutes because it has its own dedicated lane on the freeway. So that's really, really cool. So sometimes I'll take that. And it also goes right if you catch trains, you want to go to like the airport, it goes right there. So that's really cool. It stops by the beach too, which is nice. Anyways, I was on there and it was overcrowded that day. And I was like, I don't, oh well, I was only gonna be on there for about 10 minutes anyway, so not a big deal. But when I got on there, I noticed that it was like all a bunch of men sitting down. Okay, I'm about to get off, I have like two stops. I didn't really care. I didn't want to be bothered. But I noticed a woman got on and she peacefully asked the driver if there was another one that was coming after him because of I didn't hear the reason why, I found out later. And I don't know if he ignored her or blew her off or whatever, but she ended up getting on. And so she's standing and she doesn't even have a place to hold herself. And then I look and I see that it looks like she's about 9 months pregnant, 8.5 to 9 months pregnant. It looked like a baby was coming either, now to 2 weeks from now. And she was a woman of color, she was dark brown skin, and clear as day, 8.5 to 9 months pregnant. And I see her, you can see her completely pregnant, a little bit of belly showing because at that point, the clothes won't really fit right. And I look back over at these men, and I see all these big old grown men sitting down, relaxing, and I look over and I see this lady, and then I'm like, "Absolutely not." So I actually stood up for the woman and ordered the men to give up a seat for her, and they immediately did, and she was really, really thankful, super sweet, and she, was able to sit down. And I thought, wow, I actually had to do that. None of these men that are sitting down would have taken it upon them or had the awareness to see her and take it upon them to say, "Oh, I'm sorry," but I could feel the energy in the air of the stigma because she's a dark brown skinned woman of color. I could feel the energy in the air of, like, what it felt like was they were subliminally saying, "Oh, that's your fault." That's what it felt like. The vibe was, "Oh, you're pregnant, that's your fault." They didn't care, "I'm gonna do me" kind of attitude. Men of all different ethnicities, all different ages, mostly they were 40s and 50s. So these guys know better. They were just choosing. There was maybe like 2 of the men who looked like they were seniors. So for them, I wasn't as worried, but for all of the other ones, I was like, "Wow." So one immediately gave up his seat, and then I got off and, did my good deed for the day. But yeah, he said that they had egos. Yeah. It was a bad vibe. And when I looked at her face, I could kind of see the hurt in her face a little bit. I'm like, she doesn't need that stress of, demanding them get up or asking for a seat. But I could see the sadness a little bit. And I'm like, this just is not right. So I stood up for her. And right before that, there was another woman of color that said, "Would you like to stand here?" She was standing as well, but allowed her to stand where she could hold herself on the rail. And that's when I noticed that she was pregnant. And that's when I was like, wait a minute. But it's crazy that a woman, like, even has to say something to the guys as opposed to they just notice. And then there was 2 younger guys in front of her clowning around, making jokes, talking about just ridiculous stuff, and I'm like, "This is like, wow." So it was the women that took care of and nurtured the woman who was pregnant. The men were completely useless in that situation, and I came home and I was like, "Minus 2 points for men," because I was a little bit frustrated after that. That kind of pissed me off a little bit, to be honest with you. Uh, but yeah, but a lot of that I think had to do with racial stigmas as well. I do believe that if she was a heavy set Latina woman, um, they would have paid more attention or they would have, immediately done that. They would have had to have been told or asked. And definitely if she was, another ethnicity outside of that, but I did feel that stigma in the air as well, coming from all of them and coming from there's every single ethnicity pretty much in there, except for I don't think I saw an Asian man. But yeah, that was an interesting situation, so that kind of peeled me, ticked me off just a little bit, but, at least I was able to help. But, outside of that, yeah, I'm feeling much better, had that cold. That's why I didn't come on here sooner. I know I made a post saying like, "Oh, I'm gonna be on here in a couple of days," and I was already feeling the cold, but I was just it was one of those colds where I was convincing myself, I'm like, "It'll get better. Just just drink some water and take some vitamin C and you'll wake up feeling normal." But it was like every day I would get like a different version of the cold. It was not fun. So, like, the next day, I had a full stuffy nose. The day after that, lost my sense of smell and started sneezing nonstop. The next day after that, lost my voice. I'm like, "Okay." Felt great, but then lost my voice. The next day so it was like one thing after another. So that's why I didn't get on here, but at least I was able to get the cold, I guess, strengthen my immunity. Because I don't know if you've had this happen, but I definitely have, where sometimes if I'm taking all this stuff to ward off colds, elderberry and homeopathic and vitamin C and all that good stuff, etcetera, when I'm taking all that stuff, it does work, but it's like it's only kind of like temporary. If you like lax on taking all your vitamins and supplements, that same cold will try to come back once you get exposed to it. But sometimes when you just allow yourself just to get through it, fight off that cold, then I notice after that usually takes a while before I get a cold like that again. So I'm like, rather than trying to fight off a cold every 2 weeks, like, I'll just go ahead and pretty much fine. I'll just allow the cold to do its thing. No fun, but, um, yeah, get a mask if you guys can. I'm actually gonna start wearing mask if I'm in, like, a crowded area because so many germs if you're in a major yeah, that's a whole other thing because that could get us into some other current events that, might be a little bit unpleasant to talk about, but, make sure that, you have the things that you need. As far as the spiritual stuff, we'll do a tape where we talk about spiritual stuff and metaphysics and share more stories about supernatural stuff. But right now, I wanted to keep it a little bit more about other topics. But yeah, thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for hanging out live. And until next time, I wanted to catch up with you guys. I know we talked about a bunch of different stuff on this tape, but I'll come back and make I usually will do, like, more focus themed lives, but I hope you have an awesome, cool, fun, amazing rest of the day. Um, like and subscribe, check out my latest video, all that good stuff. Alright, talk to you later. Bye-bye.